The Rise and Shine podcast series is made possible by the generous support of Bonnie Vozar of Chicago, Illinois.
Wait for this. It was great. Imperfect humans are God's verbing. We enacting our imperfection and moving forward despite all the challenges and moving forward with our human optimism and our steadfast will. We are God's act of perfecting.
This is Rise and Shine, a podcast that offers timeless wisdom and uplifting meditations to fill your heart, feed your soul, and start your day on a positive note. Here is Adrienne Gold Davis.
The newest Momentum publication, The Art and Practice of Living Wondrously, was edited by Dr. Ronnie Zief-Krieger, who is Momentum's Director of Education. And this work, it's been in progress for more than 5 years. I mean, who could have imagined that this book would land just when so many of us are yearning for joy, for strength, and for deeper meaning? And then the world around us is searching for hope and healing. Living Wondrously feels more essential than ever. So this inspiring collection of original essays written by world-renowned leaders and thinkers offers fresh, soul-nourishing pathways to personal growth and spiritual connection. And the book dovetails insights from social science and Jewish wisdom that pertain to elevating daily living. And one of the extraordinary writers is the luminous Chaya Lester of Jerusalem. Chaya Lester is a psychotherapist. She is co-director of the Shalev Center for Jewish Personal Growth. Her books include Lit, Poems to Ignite Your Jewish Holidays, Baal's Daughter, From the Bible Belt to the Holy Land, which is based on her acclaimed one-woman show about life in Israel, and my personal favorite, Ink from Ash, Healing and Empowerment During the October 7th War. Now, her essay that's in this newest and upcoming book, The Art and Practice of Living Wondrously, is both intriguing and it's also paradigm shifting. I want to read a little bit from her essay, which is called The Art of Being Flawsome, just so you get a taste for it. Flawsome, the state in which your flaws also generate your greatness. Living unafraid of imperfection is an elusive art form. Now, we may think that flaws get in the way of our happiness, but embracing our flaws can actually lead to our greatest happiness. When we embrace our flaws, we access that unique state of being flawsome. Now, contrary to popular belief, you are not awesome in spite of your flaws. You are awesome because of them. For our flaws define our path forward and sculpt who we are destined to be in the world. So please join me and welcome Chaya Lester. Chaya, welcome. Can you help unpack that glorious verse?
Yes, thank you. It's wonderful to be here. I'm very thrilled to unpack it because the world needs it so bad. We need more compassion in ourselves. Life is hard enough. Just living is hard enough. And then when we add onto it a layer of the need for perfectionism, the need to be the success story, we just agonize what's already hard. And we need to have more compassion on ourselves and our families and each other and the world around us. So that's where I got this, this beautiful endeavor of the art of being flawsome, is from a sense of like, how do we nurture ourselves through the challenges of life and not add on to the challenges with our own, self demands all the time. So that's where flawsome comes up for me. And I think so many of us need it.
Well, it's interesting because I seem to recall that you had come up with this concept and written this essay even before October 7th. And I can't imagine a time you, as an Israeli, raising a family in Jerusalem, how has this mindset helped get you through the war in the past couple of years?
Wow. Yeah, I wrote it. I came up with this idea during Corona, actually. So, we've been in this process for quite a while, humanity and the Jewish people lately. And we need healing teachings like this. And that's why I love Torah-based wisdom is how many times have I woken up on a dreary day after a night in the bomb shelter in Jerusalem and needed to somehow get myself through the challenges of existential threat and the worries. And so many times I've just found myself relying on core Jewish teachings that feel like they give me great resilience and a holding container through this incredibly challenging time. So yeah, like I said before, we need it now more than ever. And certainly in Israel, you see the Israeli spirit, triumph in spite of and overcoming the challenges just through our own strength, but mental strength and spiritual strength. And we are strengthened. I am strengthened by teachings in the Torah that get me through it.
So, of course, me too, over here in the diaspora where we have our own Pekalach, of course. But, one of the things I was thinking about this morning as I was looking forward to talking to you is this principle of flawsomeness, of your flaws also being perhaps the birthplace of your greatness.
Mhm.
We take so much heat here in the diaspora. Obviously, you take it literally, but figuratively, we take so much heat for every move that Israel makes, just for being a Jew. And it seems to me, unless I'm incorrect, this idea of flawsomeness is knowing that there can be mistakes. You can own them. You don't have to be above reproach to also have value. And I haven't been able to find a way to speak to people who just want to tear down Israel and her policies, who expect of Israel an awesomeness that's not containing any flaws whatsoever. Have you ever thought about that?
Oh my, yeah. I think that's one of the really painful parts of the Jewish people's experience right now. But also at the same time, there's a certain we do need to rise to be a priestly nation and a light unto the nations. And the nations are wanting us to do that. I think is that kind of at the core of it is they do want us to be perfect and they want us to be leaders for humanity and for morality. And in a sense, I feel like we're being called to that and we need to be doing that. And it is a tricky tightrope to walk in the sense that we're not perfect. And yeah, maybe the Jewish people can also model the flawsome leaders of the world. Although, from my estimation, we're doing an amazing job. But let me, if I can, maybe direct us back to one of the core teachings that get me through it.
Sure.
That's right there woven into Breshit, into Genesis, the beginning of creation, and just using that as sort of an anchor for us in this exploration of, oh my God, how do we as a people persevere through all this? So, each of the days of creation, God saw that it was good. Except for on one day, on the sixth day, it said God looked and saw that it was very good. And of course, anytime there's like a discrepancy in the text, the commentators are going to jump in, and they jump in there, and the Midrash fills in that says, what was so very good that happened on the sixth day of creation? And the answer, so beautifully, is that God created the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination in humans.
Okay.
And so this mind-blowing sort of paradoxical statement of the very good is the creation of something bad.
Hold on one second, just for our listeners who may not understand the principle of the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, just unpack that a little bit for us.
Yes, the idea is that God, in God's great wisdom, manufactured humans with a myriad traits. And one of those traits is that we have a deep desire for the good, a Yetzer HaTov, but simultaneously a deep desire for the bad. And we have evil implanted in us, in a way, you could say. And which is an intense thing to grapple with. But here we see it, so clearly in the world around us and within us.
Okay.
So that's what the the rabbinic figures are trying to break open here as they jump into this commentary on that sixth day of creation is like, yeah, how do we deal with the fact that life does not always seem to be very good, and we ourselves do not always seem to be very good, and yet that is the seed for this paradoxical, very good superlativeness that we
Okay, how is that the seed? How is that the
understand.
case?
It's a little, it is a mind-boggling paradox.
It is.
But that's the idea, is that if we can look at ourselves almost with divine perspective and see the parts in me that are good and okay, yes, those are good. I can be with that. I can identify with that. But that divine ability to look at my challenges and my flaws and say, okay, this is actually very good. To look at the world around me and its challenges and its flaws and say, wait a second, according to God's plan and God's vision, this is actually very good.
Okay, I don't get why it was a necessary component of the human condition. What it is does that in some way say that the human being's imperfection is their drive or their spiritual nautilus, if you will, to correct that imperfection?
Yes. Okay, so let's take it one step deeper and go into some Kabbalah here. If we look at the teachings throughout Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, let's just go to Rav Kook, who was one of the greatest, Kabbalistic luminaries in the Jewish world. And he has an incredible concept. It's called Shlemut and Hishtalmut. Shlemut means perfection,
Right.
and Hishtalmut means perfecting, the act of becoming more perfect. So the idea is that the divine is perfect, right? God is perfect. God is perfect. But in order for God to be truly perfect, God has to contain everything, right? God has to contain the ability to be imperfect. If God contains everything, then God has to contain some little corner over there of not perfect. And what that necessitates or allows for is perfecting, is an active movement of becoming even more perfect all the time. And the only way to have that action of becoming more perfect is to not be perfect, is to have something bad. And then the work becomes, how am I in an active? God is a verb. And you know what? This is the incredible, wait for this. Imperfect humans are God's verbing. We enacting our imperfection and having free will and moving forward despite all the challenges and moving forward with our human optimism and our steadfast will, we are God's act of perfecting.
Okay, hold on one second. Chaya, I remember learning a verse years ago, for God's candle is the soul of man. And I never quite understood why God needed a candle. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that connection. Yes. And when we can actually feel that, oh, me and my imperfection, I am God's candle. I am co-creator and partner and bringing light into the world and making the world a better place. And the only way that I can make the world a better place is to have an imperfect place to make it better in. And when we live from that place, wow, can we handle the adversities?
One of the things you wrote, I'm going to read it right now. It's what you're saying now helps me understand this. You wrote, does embracing flaws mean that we just sit by and benevolently accept all the rank injustices of the world? Of course not. Our job is to become master tightrope walkers, forever balancing between acceptance and improvement, always wanting to be better and improved, and yet knowing that self-love means accepting ourselves just the way we are. The glorious and often agonizing dialectic of our lives. Our work is to be continuously working on ourselves, even as we are continuously reminding ourselves that we are perfect just the way we are. Okay, this sounds like an oxymoron. Please help me understand how we can consciously, continuously remind ourselves that we're perfect the way we are while continually working on ourselves.
Yes, beautiful. So I think if we just look at what it's like to be a parent, to be a mother.
Okay.
Here we are with momentum. This is about the incredible acts of parenting that that what you want to give your child is, on the one hand, a sense of how wonderful they are. And you also want to help them grow. and you want to help them improve, and you want to teach them how to grow and improve and to generate goodness in their own lives. And it is that exact, again, that tightrope of, on the one hand, I'm just going to feed my child so many visions of how perfect they are and give them all of that love, knowing that that love is going to be the root of their ability to then handle their own imperfections. And we want to help them handle their own imperfections. And the best fertilizer for our children's and our own ability to handle our challenges is when we have that root, that real core of, I know I'm perfect the way I am. I'm lovable the way I am. And then when you work from that place of, I know I'm lovable the way I am, and I just want to shine even more. And so it's that's the first orientation is, you're perfect. This is very good. And then, yeah, and from that place, how do you continue to improve yourself? But it's doing it from, so often we think that I'm only going to get better and I'm only going to improve in something if I beat myself up over the fact that I haven't gotten it down yet. And that's just faulty, unfortunately. When we come from a place of self-love, we're going to be able to hold our imperfections so much better instead of denying them, instead of fighting against them. So, okay, I see it. I see I have this imperfection. I know I'm good. How can I work on this and hold it from that place of self-love, as well as the desire to be perfecting and improvement?
So, I mean, this is extraordinary. I would imagine that this informs your psychotherapy. Is there anything in traditional psychotherapy that dovetails with this idea, or?
Yes, absolutely. So thank God it's all over. Thank God for psychotherapy, and so many dovetails with Jewish wisdom as well, is a dialectical behavioral therapy. The dialectical DBT,
Right.
using the dialectic of saying, on the one hand, I know that I'm great, and on the other hand, I know that I can be greater. And so there's so many psychological approaches that know the importance of the human capacity to hold paradox
You're
when
right.
it comes to how we view ourselves and the world around us. When we're able to hold the paradoxes, we are healthier mentally.
Wow. I know that that's true intuitively. I know that that's true. But yet I know many people, particularly young people these days, whose degree of self-loathing is forces them um, underground in some ways. Can you give me an understanding of how one can have the art and practice of living wondrously, the name of this book? Are you saying, if I have this issue, this imperfection, if you will, this covering over of my essential holiness, that God implanted it in me, but it doesn't make me bad. So how do you separate? I guess maybe because so many of us have been influenced by, the whole Christian philosophy around, hate the saint, love the sinner, or hate the sin, love the sinner, all of that kind of stuff. How does that bear out? Are we essentially good and we mess up? Or are we always good and we cover up that good with things that occlude it?
Mm. Well, I don't know if it needs to be, to be one or the other. I think that's the wonderful power of paradox, is that I am good, and I'm working from that place, and things occlude it, and we also mess up. So, I think that we're all stumbling our way through the pains of not being enough. And when we see our children suffering from this, and God knows, I see so many teenagers in particular where they're facing, the mirages of Instagram and the entire social media culture, where you just put on a face and it's all of these facades, where underneath there's so much pain, and there needs to be better holdings of that, better teachings for our young people. And that's why I think, these teachings are so important, is to be able to communicate to our youth and ourselves, obviously, that they are good and they will mess up. That's built into the system, is you're going to mess up. You're going to fail. You're going to fall, and that's okay. And you just get back up and you keep on working on yourself with self-love.
So how does a parent, based on this premise, how would you think a parent would be best served to teach the art of flossomeness to their children? What kind of language, what kind of role modeling
Yeah.
creates a dynamic where they are able to see themselves as flossom?
Right. Well, first and foremost, obviously, it starts with how we talk to our inner child, to ourselves, and like that ability of each of us as parents to, on the one hand, first and foremost, soothe ourselves through our own pain about who we are and all of our lacks. So that's going to be the first step, is to do our own self-talk and our own self-parenting. As a therapist, I do a lot of inner child work where you just go back inside and time travel back to your inner child and tell her how wonderful, lovable, and acceptable she is. And whenever I get my own triggers, then I do that self-talk and self-soothing to myself. And therapy is also full, the psychotherapeutic world is full of tools for how you do self-talk and self-soothing, where you literally talk to yourself and say, even though I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now, I love and accept myself. I can't tell you how many times I do this every day with clients, is I just say, give yourself a hug and pat yourselves back and forth, right, left on your shoulders, and tell yourself, even though I'm feeling really bad about myself right now, I love and accept myself, and I know I'm made this way for a reason. Just these mantras for ourselves when we're feeling the triggers and when we're faced with the pains. So having that practice down for ourselves first and foremost, obviously, I know it sounds cliche, but we got to start with ourselves, and not being afraid to take a moment when you feel triggered and say, okay, wait a second, let me just love myself through this. Remember how flawsome I am. Even though, and tell myself these, I like even though statements. So even though I messed up on that thing I really wanted to get right, I love and accept myself, and it's going to be okay. So even those statements and doing that self-soothing to myself, and then perfecting that and then bringing that to our kids of, yeah, even though you didn't get X right, I love and accept you, and it's going to be okay. And letting them know that they're okay in their imperfections, letting them know that it's okay to be imperfect, and it's okay to um to not always be the success story, that's not the real success. The real success is loving yourself through it, and just kind of filling them up with that love and acceptance, at the same time as encouraging them to improve.
You know, I think, or I have to be honest, most of my critiques or less than generous expressions of their flossomeness with my children came when I felt threatened by their choices, or felt that they were um, choosing to do things or say things or behave in certain ways that I felt were in some ways dangerous for them. I wonder, when I hear you speaking, I'm wondering if they really felt, if they were really that they felt dangerous to me, or if they just felt outside of my control.
Yeah.
I wonder. I wonder. I mean, obviously, I have adult children now, and so I can look at it from a different perspective. But if you had a piece of advice to give our listeners right now about how to, or just a few sentences that define what it means to be flawsome in a way, through a Jewish lens perhaps, that they can carry that as their badge and their what do you call it? That it's their talisman to move forward. What might you say?
Beautiful. I think in those moments when you encounter your own imperfection, to remember the divine vision of very good, and to be able to hold yourself with that divine eye that says, I made you this way for a reason, where God is saying to you, well, yes, you're going to parent yourself and you're going to do your own self-soothing, but you can also pull on the Jewish wisdom teaches us the wondrous things that happen when we connect to God, when we can go to that divine source of compassion and love and acceptance, and the knowing that God created me exactly like this for a reason. God made me this way for a reason, and it's very good. And having that anchor in that divine love, I think helps us enormously. When I look at like clients of mine who are suffering, the clients who are able to anchor into a sense of divine love have a much easier time pulling themselves out of the pits of, self-hatred. So I would recommend that as like a real starting point, is to generate a sense of God loves me. I have a relationship with a loving, friendly divine who just wants my good and made me this way for a reason.
And for a person who can't wrap their head around the concept of God or the divine, if God is a verb, what does that mean?
Right.
What might they say to themselves then?
What do you do when you don't believe in God? And how do you get through the day? It's hard. So going back then to that essential place of self-love, I think is going to be a real haven in that case of a sense that hopefully humanity is on a course towards improvement, a sense of hope, a sense of optimism about human destiny and evolution, that it goes through ups and downs and hardships and triumphs, and there's a longer vision, a broader context for whatever this current challenge is, stepping back and giving ourselves broader contexts of human evolution and a sense of hope and the goodness of humanity, and then each of our own personal goodness at the end of the day, which is the Jewish view of that, is that we are all little pieces of the divine, and we can always access that within ourselves.
Well, that was one of the best descriptions of what is God I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Thank you. Chaya, thank you for your erudition. Is that a word? Your erudition, for your ability to articulate in both mystical, spiritual, and cerebral ways, just for the light you bring into the world. For all of it, thank you for being a contributor to the art and practice of living wondrously. It's coming out any day now, actually. It might already, by the time this comes to air, it might already be out, but you can always pre-order it on Amazon. Your essay is one of my favorite pieces of book, and I'm so grateful that you took the time to speak to me.
It's a beautiful book. Thank you so much for creating it. Thank God for Momentum, creating such, I want to say flawless, but I'm sure it's also flawsome. Thank you.
Thank you, love. All right, everybody. I'll talk to you next week. Thanks again.
Thanks for listening to Rise and Shine. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to Momentum Podcasts on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Join Adrienne again next time for more timeless wisdom and uplifting meditations that fill your heart, feed your soul, and start your day on a positive note.
This podcast was made possible by the generous support of Bonnie Vozar of Chicago, Illinois. Spread the wisdom. Inspire Jewish individuals around the globe by supporting Momentum's podcasts. To sponsor, contact podcast@momentumunlimited.org. You're listening to a Momentum podcast. For unlimited inspiration, wisdom, and empowerment, visit momentumunlimited.org.